All right, earlier today, President Trump welcomed a terrorist who is now president of Syria, Ahmed Al-Sharaa, welcomed him to the White House. This marks the first time ever such a visit by a Syrian head of state. And while there are many who view the White House meeting as a first step in normalizing U.S. and Syrian relations, there are also those who are hoping that this is going to lead to some kind of commitment from the new Syrian government to address the plight of religious minorities in the country, many of whom are facing ongoing violence, even death, displacement, starvation, deprivation of necessities, even things like water and medicine. Well, ahead of today's meeting at the White House, about 100 influential Christian leaders sent a letter to President Trump urging him to stand up for Syria's persecuted Christians. Tony, in fact, was among those leaders, as is my next guest, who is here to share with us the situation right there on the ground. Joining me now is Charmaine Hedding, who's president of the Shai Fund, which works with local communities to support those who are affected by war and conflict and disaster, persecution, and so forth. She actually is joining us now from Armenia, which is very close to ground zero in this whole topic. Charmaine, welcome back to Washington Watch. Appreciate you joining us.
Great to be here with you.
Okay, so for those who may not be aware, share with us what's happening to religious minorities in Syria. What have you been hearing and seeing?
Well, I think many people aren't aware, for example, that there was over 1 million Christians in Syria, and now there's less than 300,000. And this is predominantly because of what we call a slow burn genocide, where the Christians are continuously being discriminated against, as are other religious minorities, such as the Druze and the Alawites. And the situation is pretty dire. And I think unless there's benchmarks put against President Al-Sharaa, we're going to see more of the same.
So how does the situation there now under Al-Sharaa, how does that compare to the previous situation under the regime of Bashar al-Assad?
Well, I think there was a deal between the Christians and Assad. It wasn't good. We know what he did. We know how many millions left the country. We know how many came out of the prisons, right? And we were thrilled when Assad regime was finally overthrown. But what's happened is we've just exchanged it for another authoritarian regime. And this is a jihadi regime. It's an Al-Qaeda group that have taken over through HTS with known linked ties to Al-Qaeda. And also recently, as we've seen with the massacres that have happened in the coastal plains with the Alawites and more recently with the Druze, we've seen some of these Syrian forces in Syrian army uniforms with ISIS patches. And this is the situation that we're looking at on the ground right now in Syria.
Well, that doesn't sound very hopeful. So given that context, what really are you hoping that the new Syrian government will do in all of this? What's kind of the best case scenario, or what do we need to be praying about specifically?
Well, I think one of the things that we've put forward in this letter is calling for humanitarian corridors to areas that the Syrian government has blockaded. So to the south, where the Druze and the Christians are, in an area called Sueda, they've been blocking medicines, basic food, basic movement, freedom of movement. They've occupied 38 villages. They won't let the people go back. And I think overall, there should be benchmarks. We shouldn't be lifting the Caesar sanctions without decentralization, which means we don't want jihadis ruling over Christian or Druze or Alawite villages. We want people to have self-governance and be able to have local self-governance, but national unity. So that's what we mean by decentralization. And we want equal citizenship for all. At the moment, it can only be an Arab republic with a Muslim president, and the law is Sharia Christians don't follow Sharia, neither do some of the Druze, and neither do some of the other Muslims follow that exact interpretation, like, for example, in northeast Syria. So we want to see these reforms take place, and we want to see equal citizenship that you and I take for granted. But in Syria, if you are not part of the ruling HDS, which is basically Al-Qaeda majority, you are treated like a second-class citizen. And that's the problem here. So we're calling for equal citizenship, decentralization, and of course there must be truth and reconciliation for what's happened with these massacres, where just now we're finding mass graves, for example, in the areas where the Druze and the Christians live in Sueda. There has to be truth and justice for these communities.
It's terrifying to hear. So am I hearing you correctly that you would prefer that the sanctions not be lifted or suspended for another 180 days? You think that there should be continued pressure being applied to Syria?
I think we need benchmarks, and those benchmarks need to be really clear. Unless they stop the blockade of humanitarian material and basic rights into the Christian and Druze area, we shouldn't be just giving Jelani or Sharaa a free pass. And it's the same thing going forward. There should be all of these changes in the constitution. If there aren't changes in the constitution of Syria and it continues like it is, there's no recourse for Syrian Christians or any other religious minority to say, I want equal citizen. I shouldn't be treated like this. I'm treated like a second-class dhimmi or a second-class citizen. And we know what that means in the Middle East. It means conversion laws, apostasy laws, and a jizya, an extortion tax for many of these communities. It's very dangerous. We have to see these benchmarks put in place, and Sharaa should not be given a free pass.
Extremely well said. I appreciate that very much. I mean, we all have watched as President Trump really is, in many ways, at least from the opinion of some, reshaping what's happening in the Middle East abroad. And we're grateful for that, but a lot of work to be done. Thank you so much, Charmaine Hedding, president of the Shai Fund. We appreciate you joining us today on Washington Watch.